We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
All right, let's jump right into it as we welcome you into this Tuesday edition of Money Moves, VSiN, the sports betting network. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you for the next 2 hours. We're live as always, downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Busy day today, my friend.
Yeah, I'm really excited for today. Very big baseball card, obviously. The play-in will begin tonight. The Miami Heat at the Charlotte Hornets. It's one of those days, trust me. And the nightcap, I'm actually really excited for Portland and Phoenix as well. So these should be two really good play-in games. And yeah, hockey, like it's a good sports time. Like this is a great time to be an active bettor, sports fan in general. There's a lot going on, a lot of high-stakes games in both leagues. So very much looking forward to tonight.
We talked about that a little bit yesterday. Everything that's going on, yes, with like the NBA postseason getting underway, the NHL regular season winding up, and then the NFL draft is like right around the corner as well. Baseball revving up, and we're starting to get a feel for who some of these teams actually are and if a certain team is actually a fraud or not, because it looks more and more like they are, which we'll dive into here in a bit. But let's set the table. Like you said, we have a lot to get to, like we always do here. Time to run it down.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is the Rundown.
So we talk about the NHL regular season winding down, just a couple days left. And after last night, JVT, the field of 16 for the postseason is officially set. We know all the teams that are in. Still 5 more matchups and 1 division title to be determined in the coming days. But this is the first real step. Like all of those postseason spots are officially cemented.
And one of those is the Anaheim Ducks. Congratulations.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. What a relief, too. And I have a bet on them today that I am very anxious about because talk about teams that are untrustworthy. But the Ducks get in. The Kings get in. The Philadelphia Flyers are officially in as well. They cemented their first-round matchup against the Pittsburgh Penguins, despite not getting the dang win in regulation, which was very frustrating for my bankroll yesterday. Carolina ultimately ends up getting a point. They lose in the shootout there. And with that, they are now the top seed in the Eastern Conference as well. The Buffalo Sabres are Atlantic Division champs now. So those are just kind of like surface level, everything that transpired yesterday. We'll dive deeper into that a little bit later on in the program, though, and a look at tonight's card. I think there are a few what's the word I'm looking for? Motivation-based bets to get into.
It's a tough loss for my Edmonton Oilers yesterday as well. It's not really great for the Pacific Division run as the Knights have a 2-point lead with, 2 games left?
Yeah, and they have 1 game left.
They have 1 game left, excuse me, you're right, yep.
But I was going to say, very good for my Vegas Golden Knights bet, is they're now out to minus 450 to win the Pacific Division. Would like to, I think that's maybe a conversation we need to have a little bit later. Are they a bet-on team now when it comes to the postseason? The way that they've been able to shift their game style under John Tortorella, 6-0-1 now, have not lost a game in regulation since he took over. 9 games tonight, plenty more drama to get into. We'll save that for later. Let's move it forward because you talk about the MLB card we're going to dive into. Excited to have VSiN's own Adam Burke on the program with us in about 30 minutes. Talk through some big picture stuff, some best bets he has for today. But also, how about some of the results from yesterday, including another L for the Red Sox after it finally looked like things were going in the right direction. Garrett Crochet gets rocked, pulled after just 1 2/3 innings, gives up 10 earned runs, 11 in all against the Twins. Worst start of his career yesterday.
Yeah, it is some troubling stuff for Crochet, not just the results, but some of the underlying metrics, the velocity, everything we're seeing from him. Is really bad. So you wonder if maybe there's actually something wrong with them or more. We'll talk to Burke about that coming up a little bit later. But when you combine that with the way that this AL Cy Young race has gotten off to a rocky start for some of the expected contenders, then you have guys like Hunter Brown who are on the IL. It opens up the doors, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but not just for a guy like Jose Soriano, but upstart guys like that to potentially really push their way into this conversation. So a really big deal that Crochet is struggling, and some of the others as well.
Crazy game between your Angels and Yankees also.
What we needed, I mean, from a results standpoint, the +1.5 on the run line. However, You throw a guy in there to close out a game that hasn't pitched in 10 days or so, and look what happens. 25 pitches, you give up the ghost, and you lose the game in 9 innings. So, tough result, but we took it. The second he gave up that 2-run shot, I was like, just lose by 1, and we're all good, boys. And that's what happened.
All right, well, we're going to get things started here in the NBA today. The headline, play it again, Sam. Play it in, Sam. With the NBA postseason play-in games getting underway, Amazon Prime doubleheader, Heat, Hornets, Blazers, Suns. Just to confirm, you do not know what that is in reference to, right?
I have no idea what that is.
Casablanca.
Oh, I mean, okay.
See, I knew that you wouldn't know it because you refused to watch any television or movies before the year you were born.
Incorrect.
And this is a black and white movie.
Incorrect. I've seen Casablanca because my dad made me watch it.
You have?
Yeah.
And you still didn't get it?
It sucked. I mean, I didn't remember any of it.
Oh, come on. It's a classic. You don't remember
Is that the Here's Looking at You?
Any of it?
Is that it?
It's before.
Here's Looking at You,
It's the
kid?
song. It's the song.
Right, no, but
on the
that's
piano.
Casablanca as well, right?
Yes.
Here's Looking at You, kid?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But
I don't know what in reference to.
I just keep thinking. Well, that scene in particular is like very famous. But the
I don't even know the plot.
I remember every detail. The Germans wore gray. You wore blue. No,
I don't know what that means.
I just like. Oh, come on. Okay. Anyways, let's get into the
voice.
let's get into the basketball. That's how they talk.
Oh.
I mean, not her. She said, "Play it again, Sam." But with the games,
I'll let you keep going. I got nothing here.
the games that we have coming up tonight. So let's start with. I know what the two of us at least feel is the more interesting one because we have more on the line with the Charlotte Hornets to make the postseason. They got to win 2 now in order to do it. And we've seen them get bet up here against the Miami Heat. Do you think that's the right side? Do you think the market is telling us who's ultimately going to get this done?
I'll say I'm a little surprised. It's not like it's crazy, but some spots open 5. And as you mentioned, we're up to 6. There's still 5.5s that are available or juice to the favorite side. So I'm somewhat surprised that the market hasn't looked at this, and this is a very general thought, and gone, Eric Spoelstra, 4th time in the play-in, best head coach in terms of adjustments. Heat are 3-1 against him so far this season. Yeah, we'll take 5.5 with that team. Now, the Hornets have had their power rating increased by a very wide margin since the start of the calendar year, and rightfully so. Although we've talked about their failings in some of the high-leverage spots and the fact that they have beat up on some of the bad teams. Would you consider Miami that? Well, over the last month of the season, they've been one of the worst defensive teams. As Kelly Bidlin pointed out in the Hardwood Handicappers podcast that came out earlier today, they had that team meeting after they got absolutely curb stomped by Toronto. Miami did because they've been all over the place. So they're not really in great form. Can kind of understand that. I'm just somewhat surprised. So we'll see. Maybe there's some buyback here. There's a couple of spots that got up to 6.5. In fact, MGM right now, I'm looking at my screen, is showing 6.5 juice to the dog side right now. So I'll be curious to see where this goes. But I think it does go hand in hand with where the total's gone as well. We've seen some spots open as low as 225.5, 227.5. We're upwards of 230. I would assume that it's somewhat correlated that if this is going to go in the direction of Charlotte, that this is going to be a game that can get over the total just because Charlotte, a high-volume shooting team against a bad defensive team like Miami, is potentially going to be able to have a lot of offensive success tonight.
To your point about Spoelstra and like Heat culture, that is definitely what I thought would kind of be a more public, low-hanging fruit type of an angle, especially just knowing the experience as well that the Heat have had in the play-in game. This is their 4th straight year that they've been here. 3 years ago? They go from the play-in to the finals. Granted, very different team then than what we see right now. But to your point, the recent struggles, one and covered each of their last 2 games to close out the regular season, but since March 14th, 5-11 straight up in ATS. Meanwhile, in that same framework,
that's Miami. I assume you're saying
Miami,
right,
yes. Meanwhile, I'm saying like the framework for Charlotte in that time has been polar opposites. 1-1 actually since the Hornets have kind of turned around their season against Miami, because you mentioned the 3-1 record that Miami did have. That game, that most recent game, March 17th, Charlotte was a 5.5 point home favorite, ended up winning that game by 30, and that kicked off a stretch of winning and covering 8 of 10 prior to these last couple games.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the last game against Miami, correct?
Yes.
Because I would point out in that game, Bam Adebayo did not play.
Sure.
They were pretty shorthanded, Miami was. So the last, that's why I went back to when they played on March 6th. If you go back to that game, Bam Adebayo plays. They're relatively fully healthy. I think Norm Powell wasn't out there. And they go in there, they control the game, and they win 128-120, somewhere in that range. Bam Adebayo had a pretty good night. Tyler Hero burned him quite a bit. Moussa Diabate was relatively quiet because I think the presence of Bam Adebayo really bothered him too. So those, going back and watching that game, coupled with what we're seeing here, it does give you some pause. But look, at the end of the day, and I thought Zach Cohen put this in a really good way on the podcast earlier today too, wherever you get your podcast. The presence of Eric Spoelstra is what gives me pause because he's just so good at this. But generally, when you look at the way that the Hornets have played, like you've talked about, whether it's over the last month, whether it's since the beginning of the calendar year, if I were to remove everything and just present you the statistical profiles of these teams, we're here with this number.
Yeah.
This is probably where we should be with these. And remember, too, home court advantage generally gets a little bit stronger when you talk about these postseason games. So that's also part of it. Usually you might look at this and think because of travel and all these sort of things that it's a somewhat minor or weaker home court. But the fact that this is a standalone, get a little bit of rest going into it, and this postseason, you're probably going to bump this up in the range of like 3 or 3.5. And so that's probably also part of this is maybe you're bumping this up from your own power rating perspective and the home court buying into it as well. But to your point, you mentioned the stretch of Miami's on over this last month. Let's also add in dead last in defensive efficiency over that stretch of non-garbage time, giving up 127.3 points per 100 possessions. And they've been one of the most overvalued teams over that stretch. You gave the ATS numbers. Spread differential, or how much they fail to or cover by every game, 29th in the NBA, failing to cover by 6.5 points per game.
All right, that game is at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern on Amazon Prime. The second game of the doubleheader coming up, Portland and Phoenix, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern expected tip. And we've seen movement here as well. Phoenix opened 4, bet up to 4.5, and now we've seen this come all the way down to as low as 2.5 in some spots.
Yeah, I like Portland here. I would agree. I mean, first and foremost, they are healthy. Shaden, their injury report's completely clean for the most part here, which is very good. Outside of Damian Lillard, we know is not going to be available for this team, but you've got everybody ready to go here. Jeremy Grant is going to play. Shaden Sharp is back. Now, I should say he's going to play. He's listed as questionable. All signs are going to be that that's the case. But to get a guy like Sharp back here for Portland, they're good defensively in the backcourt. Grayson Allen is questionable here for Phoenix, so we'll see if he gives it a go. I would assume he does, but we'll see if that's the case. But I can understand, given the injury report, the positive injury report for Portland, and the capabilities of them defensively, and I think the upside of what they have on offense leads me to believe that taking those points is the right thing. So I even still think 3 is playable here, which we'll have best bets a little bit later. But I do think Portland's the side, as we can get into it a little bit more later.
Yeah, the aforementioned Zach Cohen, he loves the under in this game, and we're seeing both of these games actually take money toward the under. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, remember, the Charlotte game initially got bet up, and now I think it's getting bought back down. But this Portland-Phoenix game was one of the first things I talked about over the weekend with Dustin and with Tim and Matt yesterday. Under, I think, was a play, and we're down to 216.5.
All right, you hear that music? We got to step aside. First time out of the day here on Money Moves, but stick around. Plenty more NBA talk coming up after this. Not only thoughts on the play-in moving forward, but series as a whole. Who's going to win it all? You won't want to miss it.
So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We talked about it, the NBA play-in tournament getting underway today, the NHL regular season coming down to the wire, playoff seeds still up for grabs, and with it, every game matters. So does every bet. Right now, VSiN Pro gives you daily best bets, real-time betting splits from DraftKings and Circa, AI-powered prop tools, matchup analysis, plus 24/7 video and show replays as well on the VSiN Watch app. So you're ready before the postseason really hits. Get ahead of the action now. Start today for just $9.99 or save 50% with an annual subscription. VSiN.com/subscribe is how you can learn more or come join us on a full-time basis. Again, that's VSIN.com/subscribe. So much great content up at the website right now ahead of all of this postseason action. I know we're going to have VSiN.com managing editor Adam Burke in studio with us beginning in the next segment, talk about some of the great resources that are available. We already mentioned Zach Cohen. We'll have him on the show coming up on Friday, but all of the great work that he's done with multiple articles getting you set for the NBA playoffs, Hardwood Handicappers episodes each and every day. So keep it locked in right there, JVT. And we're going to keep going with some of this NBA conversation. We didn't really get to fully dive into that second game of the day. And I know you mentioned we'll do best bets at the end of the program, but I believe you do have a play in this game. So where should people be looking first and foremost in Blazers Suns?
Yeah, I take my stand with Portland and think that they can stay inside this number or pull off the upset potentially against Phoenix. It's going to be a massive upset, obviously. But I just think that when you look at them, first off, they've got the horses defensively to match up with what the Phoenix Suns have. You have Drew Holiday at the point of attack. You've got Toumani Camara. You've got guys that you really trust in one-on-one situations. Your overall offensive upside, I think, with guys like Denny Avdia, Shaedon Sharpe coming back, I do like what this team provides in multiple different aspects. And to evoke our guy Zach one more time, I thought he brought up a great point. Phoenix, I think when you've watched them down the stretch, there's been something missing with their offense. It's been somewhat constipated. It's been disjointed, and injuries have been a part of it. And I think that the odd factor about what's gone on with Phoenix is they actually have been so injured that they get these guys back, and some of them are ball-dominant guys like Green, Devin Booker, we know, of course. And we've seen this affect their offense in a somewhat negative way where they have been really hit or miss. You look down the stretch against OKC, you have an offensive rating of 137.8. The game prior to that against the Lakers, an offensive rating of under 0.9. We can go up and down, back and forth about the way this offense has been somewhat inconsistent. And couple that with the fact that you've got a good defensive backcourt in Portland to take them on, I think that's really going to be something that helps Portland out. You've got size to attack Phoenix on the glass as well, which I think is really going to help too. Phoenix, one of the things that I think is going to bother them in a series like this, or excuse me, in a game like this, not a great defensive rebounding team. They come into this 26th in the NBA in defensive rebounding rate. And so I do think that Portland is going to pick at that wound a little bit, if you will. It's the fourth best offensive rebounding team in the association in terms of just overall missed shot attempts that they can bring in. 34.3% of their missed attempts are rebounded by themselves. So that's something that I think really does matter. Can you force turnovers at a relatively high rate? Phoenix in the middle of the pack. They turn it over about 14% of their offensive possessions. Defensively, Portland's seventh best team in terms of forcing turnovers at about a 15% clip. So those are the things that I think really do work in their favor. And I think ultimately what gets you to the point where healthy, a lot of matchups work in their favor, and they've been playing somewhat well here down the stretch, and I think Portland's going to be able to get this done tonight.
And maybe that inside game can help offset some of the three-point shooting woes that they've had in particular, because I know that has been an issue. And my only other, I guess, pushback on that thought process is you talk about the turnovers where, yes, that has been a bit of an issue for Phoenix, but it's been a big issue for Portland as well, turning it over at a pretty high rate. So do they give some of those back?
Potentially. I think you can. Look, this is it's a playing game for a reason, right?
Sure.
These two teams are pretty flawed. And when you look at them and break them down from that perspective.
And it's easy for me to say as someone who doesn't have a bet on the game, too.
Sure. No, you're supposed to point everything out. And look, to your point, too, not only does Portland have its own turnover issues, but Phoenix themselves can force turnovers at a high rate as well. So, look, it might lead to a pretty ugly game. Might get you over the total. Again, I like this thing under, but if you're giving up turnovers and free runouts the other way, if they're easy turnovers to give up easy baskets, maybe you get burned there. But I think ultimately Portland's got enough to stay inside of that. And, you see the 2.5 over at DraftKings. That's going to be my thing is I'm curious where this ultimately closes. It's 2.5 juice to the dog side at a couple of spots. The other threes that are out there at minus 110. But I'll be curious to see where we get to by the time we get to game time.
So big picture, as we now obviously know the postseason field, right? Still to be determined who's going to all be in the first round. But in terms of the big picture, who's going to win it all? OKC, no secret, has been the favorite for a long time. Plus 110, a very short shot ultimately to win it all here. And there was an anonymous NBA report from The Athletic, which came out this week, where players were able to say who they thought ultimately was going to go on to win it all. And OKC did end up getting 50% of all of the votes.
Who voted for Atlanta? It's got to be a Hawks player, right?
You can't vote for your own team.
Who voted for Atlanta?
Lord knows. But
ridiculous vote.
I bring this up to say, how much stock do you put in the opinions of guys who have played these teams throughout the course of the year? Because OKC, yes, gets the most massive volume here. San Antonio, the second most picked with 25.3% of the vote. And then the Boston Celtics and Denver Nuggets. So it follows pretty well what the odds board is, big picture. But one I particularly wanted to ask you about is a team I know you're not as high on in the Detroit Pistons. And an anonymous player said, quote, "They play physical as hell. They dictate the physicality of the game. And if you don't go in there and play physical with them, they'll beat you. They'll beat the bleep out of you." Are we potentially selling the Pistons short a little bit? They are 5-1 to win the East.
I'm probably doing it, I would say. Mitch and I did this exercise on Pod of the Futures where we were drawing lines through teams, and I drew a line through Detroit. It's probably unfair of me to say that, but I do think that the times, and again, they've won 60 games, so you're really you're picking at small issues with this team, but it does turn me off when you look at some of those high leverage games and you see some similar game plans from other teams. The inability to generate offense in some of these games when Cade Cunningham has an adequate defender on him, the fact that he is a vast majority of their offense, I don't doubt that they have a high level defensively. They're a very good defensive team. But as I've said before, when your secondary shot creator is a front court player that doesn't have the skills to play out on the perimeter, I think that's a small problem for Detroit when you get into a best of 7 where teams are hyper-focused on a game plan against you. So that, to me, is part of the issue. We'll see. I mean, look, I would say this. I don't think they want Charlotte to win 2 games because I think they would still be able to win that series and they would be prohibitive favorites to do so. But do you want to play like 6 grind them out type of games against a team like Charlotte, or do you want whatever between Philly, Orlando, and Miami to limp out of the play and then play you there? And I think you're probably picking Philly and or Miami, just considering where they're at. So I personally am probably selling them short, but I would ask anybody then too, all right, are you picking them over teams X, Y, and Z? And there's probably few people that really are, especially when it comes to teams like the Celtics or maybe even the Cavs, who we'll see if they can actually get it done because there's a lot of folks who would doubt that, and I don't blame them considering James Harden's presence on that roster.
It's no secret of the West. You were very high on the Denver Nuggets this year.
I refuse to back down.
They'll
be eliminated by Minnesota in 4 games.
Right. No, one player simply said, I trust Nikola. Obviously, Nikola Jokic, who, despite not winning MVP this year, is probably still the best player in the National Basketball Association. They're plus 550 to win the West. Another player talking about the Spurs, who was his pick to win it all, said it's just their size, length, athleticism, and shooting. I think they're a really high-level team. The big question about San Antonio, of course, is the fact that they haven't really been here before. They haven't had to face these types of situations. And you, in particular, like the matchup with Denver when these two have to go head-to-head. What's your feel on San Antonio?
I mean, I'd ask, they're shooting like just under 36% from threes. I don't know about the shooting that we're talking about here. They're 25th and above the break three-point shooting, so I don't know what the player is watching. Maybe this is the person that voted for the Atlanta Hawks. But no, I would say, so it's the non-experience factor is what we're talking about here. I mean, we talk about potential game plans. You're going to try to force this team to take above the break threes. You're going to play off of them. You're going to ask them to shoot. And we'll see if they can answer that call in multiple series or multiple times in a best of 7. And I think that's ultimately what worries you a little bit. I think San Antonio would beat a Portland type, whatever that 2-7 matchup's going to be. But I think that'd be a little bit more of a grind of a series than they expect. And I don't think they want any piece of Denver or Minnesota. Whoever comes out of that series between those two is, I think, more than capable of eliminating them, especially when you talk about the way that they play. So I think that they are a very good team. But we have a long, long list of teams, Stormy, that don't have the playoff experience that fall short their first time in the postseason. And I don't think it would be a shock to see after a strong regular season that this team finds its end in a second round against either Denver or Minnesota, whoever comes out.
Interesting nugget also coming out of the article that I thought was worth noting because, again, OKC was the overwhelming favorite here, more than 50% of the players ultimately picking the Thunder to get the job done as the favorite. The previous 4 years since The Athletic began doing this poll, the team that the players selected to win it all did not go on to win. So last year, the Celtics were the pick. Obviously, OKC wins as they try to have their title defense here. 2024, Nuggets was the pick. Actual winner was the Celtics. 2023, the Bucks. Actual winner, Denver. Warriors in 2022, actual winner, Toronto Raptors.
I mean, you're polling people that voted for the Hawks to win the championship. So
it's 0.6%.
It's a ridiculous vote.
Have you added any futures when we get to best bets a little bit later? Is there a couple series bets?
Got 2. There are 2 that we have added so far.
Cool. We're also going to hear a little bit, not only your opinion on those series bets, we'll hear from Zach Cohen as well, played some clips from Hardwood Handicappers, because even just some conversation points I think are interesting. There's one series in particular that he likes taking a couple games in, whereas the majority of people are talking about how to fade this team. He's talking about a way to buy in on that.
Dude, I'm so jealous. I was listening to today's episode, and Zach was like, yeah, I think I'm going to go because he lives in Phoenix.
Yeah,
like, I think I'm going to go to the playing game tonight. I'm not sure yet. Like, to have that option.
Must be nice. Well, we might have that one day.
In a few years,
in the short-term future. Okay, we got to step aside here on Money Moves. When we come back, VSiN's own Adam Burke going to join the program, talk about some of the great resources we have up at VSiN.com right now, and a lot of Major League Baseball discussion with some interesting results yesterday and beyond. Stay with us.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
All right, rolling along here on a Tuesday. Stormy Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you, live from downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. Money Moves Excited to have our good friend and colleague Adam Burke on the desk with us, VSiN.com managing editor. Going to dive into plenty of Major League Baseball conversation here in a moment. But because I think naturally so, we have been NBA dominant so far here, Adam, with the NBA play-in games getting set today with the Amazon Prime doubleheader. Would love, from your perspective, with all of the work that you do at the website, what kind of resources people should know we have up at VSiN.com right now as they get set to bet all this postseason action.
Yeah, I think the most important resource for the NBA over at VSiN.com is Zachary Cohen, who you guys just mentioned here, one of the hosts of Hardwood Handicappers, I guess the host of Hardwood Handicappers now, writing up all the series previews, the play-in games, all kinds of stuff for the NBA postseason here, as he's been doing throughout the course of the year on a nightly basis. We have our up-to-AI NBA player prop projections over there as well. Steve Makinen's power ratings and his projected numbers, part of our tools suite over there at the website. So there's a lot of resources, but Zach is definitely a go-to one here for the NBA, and looking forward to seeing all of his playoff coverage.
Are you excited about your Cleveland Cavaliers?
Oh, they made the playoffs? I didn't even know.
Stop.
Come on now.
No, I mean, whatever. As long as
Did it get warm and fuzzy?
At least they're a little bit healthier this year than they have been, going into the playoffs the last couple of years.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. Mitch today on the podcast was like, this team, it was an embarrassment that they fell last year. I'm like, Mitch, like Darius Garland was hurt. They were
Donovan Mitchell could barely move.
Yeah, like they were put together by glue and bubble gum. Like they were not a whole unit last year. So I trust them a little bit.
And then the year before, they had JB Bickerstaff, who collapses in the second half almost every season.
This guy actually doesn't like Cleveland Cavaliers basketball.
Look at him.
See, you get him started.
I mean, look, I do host the VSiN Saturday Betting Hour on Saturdays. That's broadcast on, I think, like 15-ish radio affiliates in the state of Ohio. So I guess I have to have a working knowledge of the Cavs.
Is this one of those things where when they make a deep run, then you'll support them?
I mean, I'm not going to be a bandwagon fan.
I don't think you would be a bandwagon, but I'm just saying you're being critical of them now all of a
I
sudden.
still would. The NBA is just not my thing.
So you won't be like me tomorrow night, which is find an isolated room and watch the Clippers play the Warriors in a meaningless play-in game just to be eliminated, hopefully, by the Oklahoma City Thunder in like 3 weeks.
I don't know. You made it sound to me like you were going to drive the 4 hours down to Phoenix and join Zach for the play-in game.
I want to. I wish. I'm going to San Diego this weekend. I was hoping the Padres would be in town, but irony, I suppose, they're going to be in Anaheim to play the Angels.
Oh, wow. Of course, the one team that you actually would like to go see.
Of course.
With that, are you going to do that for the Hornets tonight too, JVT? Lock yourself away?
I might. I mean, I don't know. I got nothing going on. I was hoping maybe some friends with similar loyalties to the Charlotte Hornets would invite me to places
Come on
to
down.
go watch the game.
We live so far away from you.
You do.
I don't feel like you have any interest in coming to our house.
Probably not. I also found a new spot that is even farther away.
Really?
Yeah, dude.
Why?
Because I like it. I like being by the mountains.
And I guess you're not drinking right now, so you don't have to worry about the long trek
Isolated,
home or anything
sit on
like
the
that.
roof and just meditate.
Let's get into a little MLB talk. I know we'll get to some best bets coming up in the next segment, but looking back before we look forward, yesterday, a very offensive day throughout Major League Baseball. I mean, the home runs were out of control. I think it was 9 different players that had multi-home run games yesterday. What do you credit this trend to? Is it something you think that can continue?
Yeah, so offense was not really impressive throughout Major League Baseball over the first couple of weeks of the season here. And in fact, we had the lowest slugging percentage league-wide in the month of April, dating back to 2022. So it had been a few years since we'd seen such a power outage in Major League Baseball. I don't know if it's the weather, because it definitely did warm up. It's been much warmer in the Midwest, the East Coast, a lot of the cities where the ball doesn't carry early on in the season. It's been a lot warmer here, over the last couple of days. But yesterday, league-wide, batted .293 with a .367 on base, a .498 slugging percentage. There was an average of 14.4 runs scored per game. 3 games got into the 20s. Another game had 19 runs scored. Just a major outlier based on what we've seen here so far this season. Now the question is, does it continue, right? Was it a factor of the weather? Is it maybe, and this is, kind of my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, because the baseball's different every single year. We're starting to lose the 2025 balls now because there's a lot of carryover from the previous season. Those get put into play. They get fouled off. They get scraped, scratched, cut, whatever, thrown out of play, stuff like that. Maybe the 2026 ball is a little bit different, and we're starting to see more of those league-wide now as we get deeper into the season. That's just my conspiracy theory. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll need a lot more sample size to figure that out. But yesterday, as you mentioned, 37 home runs were hit. Just a really weird day for offense based on what we've seen here so far. So I don't know if we'll get the same thing tonight, but I can tell you that we've seen quite a few moves on the overs in tonight's games, especially in some of the warmer, more humid locations.
That was going to be my follow-up is, are we also just getting out of crappy weather? I mean, we had a couple of series in New York last week that were dreadful in terms of cold. Your boys, Cleveland, hosted Kansas City and some others. It was really cold out there as well. So maybe we're also just we're not getting to summer temperature, but we're at least starting to defrost a little bit in certain parts of the country.
Right. Now, of course, the counterpoint to that would be, you have 24 starters tonight, for example, making their fourth start of the season, right? So you would think that the pitchers are going to start getting a little bit sharper. Also, if it's not 35 degrees, you're probably going to see guys' velo tick up a little bit, kind of get back towards their career norms or what they did last year. Or if they've added velocity for this season, we'll probably start to see that. It's very, very hard to get loose and be free-flowing when it's in the mid-30s, low 40s, stuff like that. So that would be my counterpoint, right? Yeah, the weather's warming up, but also should mean the pitchers are probably throwing harder. They're making their third, fourth start of the season. Should maybe be rounding into form a little bit more, having more of a feel for their arsenals, stuff like that. So that would kind of point me towards maybe offense being a little bit harder to come by. But again, the ball was really jumping last night, and we'll see if that's the case again tonight.
Stupid question, which you can say is stupid or not, and give me the responsive answer. But we have 12 left-handed starters today and a bunch that are obviously facing each other. From an overall scoring standpoint, does that matter for the day?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? Because, obviously you get guys who don't play as much, right, getting into the lineup because teams are deploying their platoons. So a lot of bench guys, typically on average, you face a left-handed starter about 30% of the time. So those bench guys, those platoon players, are only going to play about 30% of the season, being the starting lineup. So, how many of those guys have gotten reps here early on in the year? That's a really good thing to kind of consider. Also, lefties are just harder to pick up, right? There's a lot more deception. You don't see as many of them. A lot of times, you're a lefty, you don't throw very hard, so you've got kind of a quirky arm slot or something like that. I do think unfamiliar lefties can have an advantage, and especially because now with the way the schedule has changed and you're playing every team, there are pitchers that you see maybe once a year at most, right? It's not like you're facing division opponents, 5-6 times a season like you used to. So that could be a little bit of a factor here too. And I do think that's a factor, for example, in one game tonight with the Guardians and the Cardinals, where you've got Joey Cantillo on the mound for Cleveland. Michael McGreevy's kind of your basic standard issue right-handed pitcher for St. Louis. But Cantillo's a guy, really high arm slot, big loopy curveball, different kind of matchup than what you're usually going to see. So I think it's a big advantage tonight for Cleveland because their starter is just a hard guy to pick up when you kind of one-off see him, as opposed to McGreevy, who's kind of more of a standard issue 6'4" right-hander. So I took Cleveland here tonight. It's one of the big reasons why I took them, because you have this southpaw on the mound that the Cardinals have never seen before.
For what it's worth, Stormy, grand salami today as well, 132.5. That's why I asked.
Minus 120.
By the way,
your
there were
price there.
144 runs across 10 games yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Minus 120, the price on the Guardians there. Run total in that game, 9. 16 of the runs yesterday coming from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And for an offense that has largely held that team back the last couple years, they're 7th in baseball right now in average OPS slugging. They are able to hit the baseball. How big of a feather in the cap could that be for this team as they try to actually take advantage of some of the great pitching they've had?
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? When you decide to spend money as a really cheap owner, turns out you can get a little bit better on the offensive side. And that's what the Pirates did here this offseason. They brought in Brandon Lau. They brought in Ryan O'Hearn. Ryan O'Hearn's had a great start to the season here so far. O'Neal Cruz can't play center field, but he certainly can hit the baseball. So, those three guys really carrying this offense. Brian Reynolds has been good. They say hitting is contagious. I don't know if that's really true or not necessarily, but it does seem to be here for the Pirates, where they brought in some of these veteran guys that are giving them better plate appearances. Brandon Lau's walked 15% of the time, too, to go along with the 6 homers that he's hit. Guys are kind of following that lead. And so the Pirates, big uptick offensively, and it's been relatively chilly. It's not a good offensive ballpark that they play in there at PNC. And they're off to this hot start in March and April. That's a really good sign for them going forward, especially as you mentioned with the pitching that they do have. And, Braxton Ashcraft seems like a guy who's probably going to take a leap this season. Bubba Chandler in the rotation, and certainly Paul Skeens. So it's a really, really promising start for the Pirates. Can they sustain it over, a 6-month period? I don't know. But getting off to a good offensive start like this and, seeing that their newcomers are actually playing up to or exceeding expectations, that's a really big positive for them going forward.
Skeens yesterday gives up the solo shot right away in the first inning and then was like awesome after that. Typical.
Well, what did we talk about yesterday? It's a good example. Cavalli had every sign in his numbers that he was a fraud. I mean, the command was awful. The strikeout numbers weren't there. And there's no way that you weren't just going to give up one barrel all year long. And then sure enough, he started to get tagged and it got ugly quick.
Yeah. Speaking of frauds, I am curious, Adam, when we come back from the break, what your opinion is on the Houston Astros, who JVT has dubbed early season
We
frauds.
called them frauds last Monday, and they haven't won a game
Since then. It's been brutal. 8-game skid, just got swept by the Mariners, so we can discuss that and a little bit more coming up. Also worth noting, because Adam did bring up the Opta AI projections for the NBA, we have those available for free right now in Major League Baseball. You can go check it out. It is only free and available for a limited time, but if you go over to VSiN.com, that as well as our betting splits are available for you to check out.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It was a road trip to forget, to say the least, for the Houston Astros as we welcome you back into Money Moves on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Stormy, Buonantony, Jonathan Von Tobel with you. VSiN.com managing editor Adam Burke, also MLB betting analyst, on the desk with us as we talk through it all. And I mentioned before the break, JVT's been pretty adamant prior to this long skid for the Astros that they were fraudulent, and it has appeared that way. They've lost 8 straight games, 9 of the last 10, just got swept by Seattle. Fortunately, though, they are opening up a 4-game set with the Colorado Rockies, who just got swept themselves by my Padres.
But who did the Rockies sweep prior to that?
We don't need to talk about it.
I think they swept the Astros.
Oh, yeah. So,
right.
okay.
Yeah. So it's not exactly a reprieve.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I didn't really think about it from that standpoint. But yes, that is part of the brutal road trip that they have been on. What have you made of everything we've seen from Houston to this point?
Well, I think it's really interesting that when you look at the Houston Astros going into play tonight, they are tied for the most runs scored in Major League Baseball. And they're a horrible baseball team. So offensively, I mean, they've been overperforming quite a bit here so far, but the pitching staff is just downright terrible. And this is more than just Josh Hader being hurt. Yep. Hunter Brown being hurt certainly doesn't help. I think it has to be really disappointing to them that Spencer Arrighetti can't come up and guarantee himself a rotation spot with all the injuries that they've had here so far. It's a bad look right now. And this is a team that I was fading coming into the season, but honestly, because I kind of thought their offense would fall off. Turns out it's actually their pitching staff that has really fallen off here. It's a bad look, especially when you consider the fact that, you know, Texas is better. That's something that I was on coming into the season. The Angels are much better than I thought they would be, especially on the pitching side, thanks to pitching coach Mike Maddox. Seattle is kind of rounding into form now. They've won 4 in a row, so they're kind of getting back on track. And I think the A's are probably a 500-ish type of team, maybe a couple of games below it. So for Houston, this is a really, really bad sign. Dropping 8 in a row, 9 of their last 10. This division is better all around them, and they are clearly not better than they were last year. So it's a bad sign for Houston, and you know I'm kind of curious to see what happens here, where they've kind of shifted a little bit away from being as analytics-driven as they were in the past. Are we kind of looking at some sort of rebuild type situation here in Houston? I think it's a possibility.
Is there a point where you look for a buyback on Houston? So you've got them under the total, right, in terms of their win total. And the reason why I asked it, and you alluded to it, Tatsuya Imai, Jeremy Pena, Christian Javier, Jake Myers, Hunter Brown, Josh Hader, Zach DeZenzo. Like, we go down the list, 12 guys in all on the injured list. So at some point you would assume they get healthier. Right. And at some point, I mean, they'll reach a bottom, but when is that point where maybe you start to buy in, and you personally can find a middle if you got like an under like we do, or maybe you're just buying low in some futures, expecting them still to make a playoff push? Is there a point where that comes?
Yeah, I definitely don't think there'll be a playoff push. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you know, looking for
adjusted
a middle on a win total. Yeah, an adjusted win total, because, you know, the most popular sports books out there, the highest handle sports books will have those numbers as you go throughout the course of the season. The one thing that's really concerning to me, though, is that, first of all, they're overperforming on offense, right? So when that levels off a little bit, they're not going to carry a .318 batting average on balls in play with an 11.5% walk rate all season long. It's just not sustainable, really, for any offense, but especially this Houston offense that's very, very right-handed dominant. That's going to be a problem for them as this season goes along. But I really, really hate when pitchers get hurt early in the season, because you do all this work over the 6 weeks of spring training to build up your arm, kind of, make any changes, make any alterations that you're going to make, change your pitch usage, change your grips, all these different kinds of things. And then you get hurt. So like in the case of Hunter Brown, for example, like he's going to have to go down and probably make 3 rehab starts, I would say. And then he's probably going to come back up because he's going to feel pressured to come back up. And then how long does it take him to actually get into midseason form when it's already going to be May, mid-May, early June, something like that? And this is not just the case with Hunter Brown, but all these guys get hurt early on in the year. You basically have to go through spring training again, but do so on the fly within the course of the season. So those are guys that can sometimes have complete throwaway years. So we'll see how Hunter Brown looks as he starts coming back, or Amai or any of these other guys. But it makes me very, very hesitant to back them, not only individually, but also from a team standpoint too.
VSiN.com managing editor Adam Burke joining us here in studio on Money Moves, talking all things Major League Baseball. You mentioned in the last segment, Guardians money line, one of your plays of the day. Adam does have an article up right now, by the way, at VSiN.com with his best bets. Our VSiN Pro subscribers to get unlimited access to not only Adam's article, but everything we have up at the website. In addition to that play, I know there are a handful of money line sides you're looking at. There's also a prop you like tonight. So where do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, let's go to the prop since we were just kind of talking about that. So Merrill Kelly, right? Merrill Kelly only threw 6 1/3 innings in spring training in MLB games, did pitch for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, but he's a guy with a bad back. He's 37 years old. I don't play baseball professionally. I don't have all the training resources and all that, but having a bad back in your late 30s isn't really a good thing, especially when you're a professional athlete. So Kelly only made 1 rehab start, 40 strikes, 32 balls on 72 pitches. So he's not really all that stretched out. Only struck out a couple, didn't look super, super sharp. And now he's going to go face a Baltimore team that, you talk about injuries, Baltimore's got a ton of them. And it hasn't really mattered because most of them are on the position player side, and they have a lot of depth there. So Merrill Kelly's going to make his first MLB start of the regular season here. He's not that deep into games. Again, only 72 pitches in his rehab start. Not a whole lot of swing and miss right now, I don't think. So I played under 4.5 strikeouts for Kelly at plus money. It's plus 117 at DraftKings this morning. As always, shop around. But I just don't see a lot of swing and miss out of him. And especially something I think is worth mentioning here, too. You mentioned the weather warming up a little bit here. Guys are probably going to get more aggressive swinging the bat because they're going to look around league wide and go, well, the ball's carrying more, right? I'm going to try to be a little bit more aggressive in counts, look for those fastballs early in the count, go ahead and take my hacks. I think guys are going to put a lot of balls in play here over the next week and a half until things kind of stabilize a little bit. So I would kind of be looking under a lot of pitcher strikeout props right now because when it's cold and the ball's not going to carry, you probably are going to take pitches and kind of zone in on one area. When it's a little bit warmer, and, you don't have to barrel it perfectly to get it out or to do some damage, I think guys are going to be a little bit more aggressive here swinging the bats. So I can see a lot of pitcher strikeout props coming in under, and I think Merrill Kelly is one here tonight.
We talked about some lefties today. Robbie Ray is going to be one of those. He opposes Brady Singer. Hasn't gone well for Singer to start the year. And the Reds offense, it stinks. It's 29th right now. Weighted runs created plus. Can Ray get it done today?
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting talking point here, too. You look at the Cincinnati Reds, minus 16 in run differential, but they're 9-7. Yep. So they're overperforming from a Pythagorean win-loss standpoint, from a base run standpoint. This is about the time of the year you're going to start to see money coming in against some of these teams or money coming in on teams, like a team like the Tigers, for example, positive run differential, but a record below 500. A little bit surprised that we haven't seen a pretty significant movement against the Reds here in this game tonight. I think there's not a lot of market confidence in the Giants. Their offense is bad as well. And Tony Vitello's already come under fire many times over as a guy, first-year manager, no MLB experience. He was the head coach at the University of Tennessee. So I just don't think people really like the Giants a whole lot. But Robbie Ray actually had a lower ERA on the road last year than he had at home. And that's a pretty interesting thing when you consider his home ballpark. But also, Brady Singer's been hit very, very hard this season. Over 64% of his balls and of his batted ball events have been hit 95 plus miles per hour. Not locating anything. He's a 2-pitch pitcher. He's pretty much a sinker slider guy. Sinker's been getting hit extremely hard. He's throwing that about 53% of the time. Should be a better matchup for a bad Giants offense, whereas I don't think Robbie Ray is a good matchup for a bad Reds offense. So I took the Giants here in this one. This is kind of a coin flippy type of game, but Giants minus 105, the play that I like in this one.
Tigers seem to be working their way out of what was a little bit of a funky start. Swept the Miami Marlins this past weekend. Tonight, opening up a 3-game set with the Kansas City Royals. Framber Valdez going with Detroit a -122 home favorite here against Cole Reagans and company. Run total 8. Where should we be looking?
Yeah, it's an interesting start for Cole Reagans. So first 2 guys he struck out looking in his last start against the Guardians. Then Jose Ramirez hit him with a comebacker. Hit him in the thumb, 4-pitch walk after the trainer came out, the pitching coach came out, all that. And they had him throw a few pitches to see if he could stay in the game. Launches his first pitch to the backstop. Then everything else he's kind of pulling high and to the arm side. Stays in for a couple of batters, doesn't work out, winds up leaving the game. Says he's fine. No, there was no damage on the x-ray, anything like that. Just said he basically was numb. He just couldn't get a feel for it. But we'll see, right? I mean, a guy who says he's feeling pretty good physically, and then all of a sudden that happens in a game. How does he bounce back in his next start? I don't know. But this is one where I'm playing the better offense. Detroit's the better offense, clearly, between these two teams. Kansas City moved in the outfield fences. And Jack Caglione still hasn't hit a home run. Bobby Witt's been on base a bunch and been stranded a ton. Vinny Pasquantino hasn't hit a home run at home. This is not a good Kansas City offense. And Detroit's kind of coming around a little bit here. And I think Framber Valdez is such a ground ball guy. He'll start to get it going as well. So I think it's a good opportunity to play the